Hi, and welcome to What the Fraud, a podcast by Sumsub where digital fraudsters meet their match. I'm Anastasia, Sales Director for the Americas here at Sumsub, and your host for this special episode. Today, we're bringing you the highlights straight from Money20 USA in Las Vegas, the heartbeat of the fintech world this week. And just like we did at Money20 Amsterdam, we've teamed up once again with our friends from the C-Suite podcast. They're right behind the camera. So we're ready. Let's get into it. We are here with Saman Nakpal, Head of Payments and Risk at Gusto. Saman, thanks for being here. Thanks to you for taking the time. And let's jump into the first question, huh? How about that?
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Amazing. The fraud landscape keeps evolving. What new fraud patterns do you see now, and which new tactics do you find hardest to stop?
So let's get back to the fundamentals first, right? Which is when we look at Gusto, we are having the lowest loss rates from a historical standpoint. And that's because we're doing a great job in terms of making sure that we are using dynamic risk-based decisioning to boost trust with our customers. That being said, if you look at underneath, there are fundamental underlying changes that are happening because of Gen AI. Gen AI is basically changing the barrier of entry for bad actors to be able to attack. And that is something that we're seeing. We're not seeing the fact that account takeover is going to change as a taxonomy, or first-party fraud is going to change as a taxonomy, or fake account fraud is going to change as a taxonomy. But what we're going to see is that the scale at which that happens is changing, because Gen AI is being able to scam people a little bit more efficiently as at this point in time. We're seeing proliferation of deepfakes, social engineering happening underneath the surface. But the good part is we have a bunch of signals, a bunch of stuff that we've done to be able to make sure that we continue to be on top of that.
Do you fight AI with AI? What would you say?
Yes, the fact of the matter is we're moving into a world where by 2030, it's estimated that there's going to be 6 billion AI agents. Now, when you have 6 billion AI agents, we only have about 8 billion people in the world. How are you going to manage the risk that comes with managing agents? And that risk has to be managed with AI, which is why this is a very exciting time where as productivity scales, as people's needs are met, people use AI agents for doing good, you will always have situations where AI agents are being used in a bad manner. And that's where you have to counteract AI with AI.
When you mentioned that you're using those signals to protect basically the life cycle of the customer, how do you approach building and maintaining a risk matrix at scale that also stays adaptive over time?
So I love the fact that you use the word life cycle, because I have a fundamental philosophy, which is risk management is not just about identity. Risk management in the era of 2020s is about building great user experiences. So, for example, the job of risk management is not to just understand who the person is, but to be able to create a good bad odds ratio that allows you to understand what you need to do. You need to have a risk appetite framework around that. And then there are always going to be false positives. And when you have false positives, you need to have a fail gracefully mechanism where if somebody had an impact on them, but they were truly doing that transaction, you're bringing a fail graceful moment and then having humans in the loop to be able to complete the transaction. So instead of just focusing on this one singular point, which is identity, you actually work progressively through a user experience flow. In the 1990s, for example, the whole thing was, how do I use signals to reduce my surface area on the customers that I impact? When we look at 2020s, every single false positive that happens tends to have a very high blast radius because it goes on social media. And what you need to be able to do is to create user experiences so that you can help customers, because it's how you show up in those moments. And my final point here is any signal you use to detect bad is also the same signal that helps you detect good. And you can't forget that. And which is why I continue to say that we're not just fraud fighters. We're fighters for good. We're making sure that the 99% of the people who are trying to do good in the world are the ones that we can enable goodness for.
What would you say are like other challenges? Because you mentioned, of course, AI and the AI agents that are going to come for us, basically. That combination between protection and conversion rates. What other challenges are like right now you're seeing every day?
The theme that I'm seeing from having walked around Money20 today is KY, know your. Like, there's a know your agent, there's a know your transaction, there's a know your business, there's know your customer, there's a KY around everything. And the reason why that is happening is because as we move into an agentic commerce world or an agentic AI world, you're going to have a 2x2 matrix. You're going to have good agents and bad agents, and you're going to have good humans, bad humans. So you're moving from a world where it was bots. Is this action being taken by a bot or being taken by a human, to this 2x2 matrix? And risk management was already complex when there was this one single cell. Now you've basically turned it into 4 cells. And that is where trust will become really, really important. And so KY, agents, trust, it was going to be kind of the theme with a lot of alphabets after KY to see how we manage risk in the near future.
No, that makes sense, definitely. Know your something is a big thing over at Money20 and in general in the world of fintech, and I think that's important. And the last one that I've got for you is just like, what are the new trends and strategies do you think will come in 2026 or in the next few years, and what advice do you have for risk and compliance teams?
The most important thing that brands will lean on in an agentic world is trust. Because in a world where AI agents are able to do a lot of your work, customers will actually be looking for trust. And trust happens when you do the right thing. Do you do the right KYA, KYB, KYT? And what I'd say is we cannot stop the world from coming, because the world is here. And it is going to be doing a lot of good. With electricity comes electrocution. And so it's our job to make sure that as we break grounds on this new electricity, that we're also prepared for handling the electrocution component of it as well, so that the world can be a safer place.
Definitely. Thank you very much, Saman. Very wise words, and happy to have you here with us, and enjoy Money 2020.
Thank you, and appreciate you guys having me here.
Here with me now, Meera Srinivasan, Chief Risk Officer at Bluevine. Meera, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Beautiful. We're going to start, with a few questions about fraud, because, that's the area we're interested in most, right?
Yeah, the fun spot.
Exactly. What new types of fraud have you seen emerge recently? And are there any old ones that managed to stick around?
Yeah, like fraud is always exciting. So everything that has happened continues to stay. They don't go away. They just evolve and take a slightly different form. So just to talk about different dimensions of fraud, first-party fraud, third-party fraud, synthetic, all of them continue to exist. So you can't drop your guard on any of them. But new types have been emerging, right? Like on even existing fraud like first-party, the scale of it has changed. Since COVID years, people have felt more comfortable defrauding financial institutions, being a little bit more bold about it. So they represent themselves, but the scale of it has changed, which means your defenses need to evolve with it. Certainly AI-generated documents, AI-driven licenses, any AI-aided fraud has certainly increased, and that's interesting because it changes the scale of what you operate at. Scale of account takeovers have changed, complexity has changed. And from being very simplistic, I'll send you a message and you compromise MFA, to these extremely professional-looking websites which compromise MFAs in real time. So the fraud vector hasn't changed, but the path of execution on it has changed. We are also seeing increasing volume of these sleeper accounts where it's sophisticated fraud, multiple entities involved in it. They create a web of good transactions and bad transactions. It's hard to determine if they are fraud. And these are all not new accounts. So they stay on your books for a while. These are sleeper accounts. And they pull money out at different times. So it makes it even harder to combat fraud. So lots changing in the landscape always.
Definitely. And you mentioned a few threats, right? Like deepfakes, like synthetic document fraud, which has surged like tremendously. And I wanted to ask you, like, how do you make sure that you are validating new customers effectively? Of course, catching bad actors, but still giving legitimate users a smooth experience, because that's the key.
Yeah, that's always the kind of the gold standard. You want to be seamless, but you also want to be secure, right? Like these are two dimensions of the same coin, and you have to balance it out. I think a lot of it starts from making the right investments in the fraud vector, right? Like you can think of, you don't want to compromise on knowing your customer or knowing your applicant. The trade-off that you're making is, do you want to ask the customer at a million step-ups, or can you seamlessly gather data around them to cover who they are? Do they have an email? Do you know their phone presence? Do you know where they're coming at you from? Invest in data sources to create a profile of the customer so you understand who's coming through. Other avenues that can help, like that's the basic. And then you start going through step-up validation. So you're not putting every customer of yours through 10 different questions, but you're asking them questions on a need-to-know basis. But you're also stepping them up, right? Like I think this is as much an organizational philosophy question on, we care about knowing the customer and we want to make the right trade-offs. So step-up authentication helps. Feedback loop from what you know and what you derive from these applications, and constant monitoring absolutely helps. So it's, I think, always evolving. And I would say, we can do all of these and they are strategies, but in my mind, there's like this philosophical alignment needed, which is risk teams should think of their roles as not just saving dollars, not just fraud losses, but they need to think of their roles as also guardians of customer experience, also as guardians of growth. Because that kind of puts the duality of how you set up a customer onboarding journey and how you solve for fraud.
No, that definitely makes sense. And I wanted to ask, how does AI play into this? Because of course we said that AI helps fraudsters, but how does it help right now you as a risk manager?
Yeah, AI I think has multiple use cases. I mean, some part of AI is not as new in the sense that machine learning models it's debatable what you want to call AI, right? Machine learning models and ability to understand how does the customer really interact with you, who this customer is, and having like neural networks and paths to classification, all of those are incredibly powerful in helping us get to the right answer on identifying fraudsters. And then there is the agentic AI element of it, which is, I think, the newer evolution of AI, where I think as much as AI agents can attack your systems and put through thousands of applications, as a company, you need to have AI agents on manual validation as well. One is data elements on identifying fake documents, fake licenses. But you also need to train as much of AI agents in your workflow, in risk operations, where driver's licenses, documents that come through to you, KYB validations, all of those can be performed validly. And companies don't run into a situation where AI-based applications flood our systems and we're not able to get to decisioning them, because that is another way fraudsters operate now. They send in so many applications that your system's overwhelmed. So AI has been meaningful from that perspective. It helps us understand and it can help us scale.
What has been the biggest challenge when it comes to fraud? So because we talked about different patterns, different ways, different channels, what do you think is like the biggest challenge right now, specifically for your company, let's say, that you're trying to overcome and be creative about?
I think it's less of a specific vector of fraud. It is more the philosophy of how fraud works, or how do investments correlate to the bottom line, right? When you think of credit or you think of other issues, they all have a continuous scale where you make an investment, the system gets better, bottom line gets better. Fraud isn't like that way, where kind of you may make an investment in controlling for a specific vector of fraud, but it's a leaky boat. So you have to build a moat around yourself. You have to invest in a certain minimum number of controls and be able to invest in those to reap the benefits of not having as much fraud. So I think the biggest challenge is the constantly evolving nature of fraud, right? Like you're firefighting between account takeovers. And again, account takeovers is an interesting topic unto itself. The customer compromised it, but there is an element of reputation risk and what you want to do that's right for the customer. So you're trying to firefight an account takeover, and then suddenly there is a AI bot attack, and then there is another element of these sleeper accounts that start pulling money. So I think it's the biggest challenge is these diverse group of fraud challenges that we have to overcome at any given point in time, and the constant need to automate. Right? That feedback loop, I would call it an opportunity, and it's also a challenge at the same time, where you have to feedback loop so quickly, which means the pace of iteration for our models have to be really, really fast to pick up what's going on and continue to maintain our edge.
And with this kind of diversity of different types and this, constant innovation and the speed of it, what's one advice you would give to compliance and risk teams at, in fintechs all around the world?
I'd say the feedback loop, right? Like as teams, we need to talk to each other. We should not shy away from reviewing cases. We should not shy away from reviewing cases from an AML perspective. So I think there has to be a risk-first mindset. There also has to be, I think my piece of advice would be to count on the rest of the organization outside of risk management, right? Like I've heard some folks say it, risk management plays a role with a capital R, capital M. But then there are your salespeople, and then there are your account managers and many others who play risk management with a small r, small m, which is equally powerful. So build that loop in. And within your automation and manual, have the feedback loop. When people review cases, don't just let it at a manual review. Feedback the loop into your models and your rules. That's the only way to scale fraud systems. Because otherwise, I think that's also a fintech problem with volume, where our volumes are not that large that models may always pick it up, or they take time to pick it up. But that forced feedback loop makes us get ahead of the challenge very quickly. That would probably be my biggest advice, and that's helped us make strides in fraud over these years.
Yeah, that connection between different teams and collaboration, it's all, it's important. And we talked about this with other guests as well. So we're all on the same page, and I think audience will also kind of benefit from it. Well, Mira, thank you very much for joining us today, for your time. I hope that you enjoy Money 2020, and maybe we'll talk soon.
Thank you so much for having me.
And now I'm joined by Luke Tuttle, Chief Product and Technology Officer at MoneyGram. Luke, thank you very much for joining us today. Great to have you here.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be back here at Money 2020. This is about my fifth in the last 10 years, so
that is great. How is it actually this year?
It's great. There's a lot of new payments technologies, of course, with crypto payments. I started Klarna 10 years ago, and it was all about alternative payment methods, and now it's much more about crypto and stablecoin. So it's interesting to see the evolution in payments since then.
And you had your session, which was called Reshaping Global Money Movement Through the Blockchain. How did it go, and what were the key takeaways you wanted the audience to walk away with?
Yeah, it was very nice. It was with Zach from Bridge, their CEO, and our talk was a lot about actually using stablecoin and what it takes to get started. And the real message there is to not get caught up in a pilot purgatory, meaning you need to do some tests to get your organization learning about stablecoins, but stablecoins work. So it's a matter of educating the teams, risk, compliance, of course, but getting that muscle and then just getting going. Because if people don't get going with their partners, then we won't get this ecosystem out there working, people working together. So it's important to get started, but also just get out of that pilot. Like get going with it.
Makes a lot of sense. And I know that you have also launched services like MoneyGram Ramps this year, right? Perhaps you could just explain exactly what that is and how you provide this global, interoperability while upholding compliance standards as well.
Yeah, it's a great question. So Ramps is our API, our technology that allows our customers to convert from crypto to cash. We're the largest global network of crypto to cash in and out in the world. So with our partners, they're able to use this API within a crypto native wallet and then enable their customers, the customers of that wallet, to get cash out at one of our 470,000 locations on the globe. And it solves a real problem about real world utility of crypto, right? It's great to have it in your wallet, but what am I going to do with it? And payments is still emergent in these wallets. So our cash out is just one way to support a preference that customers have to get into cash.
That makes a lot of sense. And we work with a lot of, ramps as well all over the world. So it's great to hear that MoneyGram has also launched this service. Can we talk a little bit about cross-border payments? Sure. They heavily rely on trust, of course. And how do you make sure that new innovations actually make the experience clearer, safer, and more transparent for the customers?
In my role at MoneyGram, I'm both the CTO and the CPO, which irrespective of your role at any company, you should always be thinking customer first. What's the real customer problem? So I'm fortunate to get to wear both hats, so that reinforce this in an organization that it's all about a real world problem that a customer has, about how do they get money to a loved one, how do I pick this up safely, and then the trust point that you added on there. So MoneyGram's been around 85 years. So we, in that with our partners, we create a lot of trust out there. But the piece that you noted is really the transparency of the send, the communication. So even just now in Colombia, we've launched a new product that is a non-custodial wallet that enhances what we call the receiver experience. So when you're sending money from, say, the US to Colombia, and someone's receiving that, before we didn't have so much communication to the receiver about what they could do. And the sender really was the one saying, hey, receiver, this is how you have to pick the money up. So with this new experience, where the customer is able to actually take that remittance and store it in stablecoin, that customer can now on their own choose when and where they want to pick the money up. So they're now more involved, the receiver's now more involved in that money flow, they're more involved in whether they would like to hold it, because safety in picking up money is a real issue. We even learned that in Colombia you can get insurance for a couple hours after you pick money up in case you get robbed. So imagine now you could actually put that into a stablecoin wallet and choose where and when you'd like to pick the money up, or the amount that you'd like to pick up. So it's really enhancing that receiver's preference and options in that remittance flow.
That's a very interesting example, actually. May I ask, and if you can share, why Colombia?
There were a number of different points there. So you always need to think about compliance and regulatory environment. That was sound for a non-custodial wallet. We'd also chosen to hire additional engineers in Colombia. So we have staff there, designers, engineers in the market with the local presence. Payments is local. If you're not in the place where people are doing payments, you're not going to get it right. So that was another piece. And then it was also a place where we have a large amount of flow into that country. And that's our main acquisition channel for this product. So it wasn't too big, it wasn't too small, it was kind of just right. So all those pieces together just fit well to say that this is a nice place to start. And also just being in LATAM, because if we can get it right in Colombia, there's 5 other markets that we've already started to launch pieces of the product into. And we can just take advantage of that geographic area for that.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I wanted to ask about AI a little bit. So, fraud prevention is, of course, a huge part of maintaining that trust with customers. Do you utilize AI right now, and how do you see it's going to evolve?
Yeah, so we've made a big commitment to AI throughout the organization, everything from our developers, who now each have a choice of tools that they can use. We've got a new risk platform that we're implementing that's, I'd call it AI native, that is, it's hard to articulate just how much different it is. It's true step function and what you can do with rules, the capabilities and the speed at which you can fine tool, understand what the rules are doing. So that new platform is already in production. We just started this 3 or 4 months ago. So with these new AI tools, they also implement faster. And you can do them with your own team. So it's pretty dramatic what's going on there. It's a little too early to say what the net results will be just because we launched it, but we've made a significant focus on AI throughout the stack.
Yeah, that's a buzzword here at Money20 anyway.
Sure.
And finally, look into the future. What do you think will define the next big leap in global payments? And maybe what advice do you have for fintechs all around the world?
I think it comes down to ubiquity, and this is where I think MoneyGram has a very strong opportunity, in that our brand, it's well known globally. the name just works. MoneyGram, right? It's not pigeonholing us into a specific type of financial service. So we can think about how to expand our network, but take advantage of both the online and offline. So cash is still heavily used throughout the globe. So any strategy that's all retail, which would be the cash network, or all digital, our view is not going to be the winning strategy. So for us, it's combining the best of our offline with our online, merging those. It's buzzword omni-channel. Retailers been talking about forever, but it's truly what is needed to win. And I feel that with MoneyGram ourselves, we have the right pieces. But I also see our competitors. I see other payments companies that are making more global offerings that might have used to just be a U.S. domestic product. They're launching that in other markets, so it's more seamless. But underlying all of this is just a lot of complexity, as you mentioned earlier, with compliance and fraud. The rules differ by country. So you see a lot of headlines that say someone can now just move money from A to B. I mean, you can, but you can't get the money out. Like, you need to really think about, okay, what are the local regulations? What is the different compliance pieces? So that's where I think we're well positioned because we've been doing it for so long. But the rest of the market's looking to do the same thing.
That's great. Well, good luck, Luke, with in 2026 with MoneyGram and your new endeavors. And thank you very much for joining us.
Great. Thank you. It was my pleasure.
I'm here with Billy Joe Wright, Chief Risk and Compliance Officer at Worldpay for Platforms. Billy, welcome. How is Money 2020 so far for you?
It's been great. It's always amazing to me how much energy that comes with the show. You come here energized and you leave pretty tired because you've spent a lot of time talking to a lot of people.
Yeah, and it's Vegas. It's always crazy.
Yes.
I'd like to maybe start with a bigger picture. How has the role of risk and compliance leaders changed in the recent years? Because you told me that you've been in the role for quite some time.
Yeah. So I've been in the risk operations space for over 20 years now. And you can definitely see how the expectations are changing as a risk and compliance leader. I think people really are looking for the risk leaders to be more of a thought partner, embedded in the strategy for the company, right? And so it's not just about protecting your company anymore. It's like, how do you help them drive growth as well? And how do you do it responsibly, right? So that's one element of it. Also, if you think about all the disruption we have in our space, crypto, stablecoin, cross-border payments, P2P, right? Like, there's so many different types of kind of emerging trends that really you have to stay on top of, what those risks may be, and constantly kind of scan for how should we be thinking about this as an organization and how do we get ahead of it. And then, of course, you have AI, right? That's everybody's talking about that here today, but it's how do you use that for your organization for good? How can you drive automation from that? But are also like, what are some of the new risks that we're seeing in the industry because of AI, right? And how that's going to present, fraudulent activity in our market as a result of AI.
Yeah, everybody's talking about AI today and in general at Money 2020. So, there are different AI systems that are used. Like, how do you combine innovation and kind of avoid adding friction to the whole, user journey and make sure that everybody stays protective?
I mean, I think that's one of the benefits of AI, right? Is that it really does, empower you to use data and AI to create an experience that not only allows you to more specifically identify risk, but it also drives automation. It makes you smarter, right? It allows you to kind of pinpoint where you actually think some fraudulent activity may be or some suspicious activity, and it does that for you. So, but you do have to be responsible about it, right? Like, I think my recommendation to people would be make sure you really understand what your use cases are for AI. And then I always say educate, innovate, and then regulate, right? So make sure that you really understand what you're doing. Go ahead and start the innovation, but start small, learn from it, and then expand from there, and then continue to collaborate with the rest of your organization on how you can do it responsibly, put the structure in, the controls in, to make sure that you're implementing it in a very responsible way.
No, that definitely makes a lot of sense. I wanted maybe to touch upon a little bit of a compliance angle as well. With regulations tightening all around the world, many firms are thinking about future-proofing compliance. What does that mean in practice, and how do you at Worldpay for Platforms build frameworks that adapt rather than just react?
I think the best, practical application of that is partnering with third parties that really are the subject matter expertise in a lot of different areas, right? And being able to utilize our partnerships, collaborate with them. What I've found in my experience, I feel like I probably spend 15-20% of my time constantly looking in the market about what new technology is out there, what can I learn from them, how do we work together. I'm on this journey of getting as much data as possible to really help drive informed decisions, and I think that's where there's so many partners out there that we can collaborate with to grab that, but it allows you to adapt, right? Having that flexibility of partnerships where this is what they're focusing on, and they're the subject matter expertise. It really gives you that opportunity to do what we're doing, which is building a risk program, enabling the business, and then leveraging partners so that we're not constantly in a reaction type of mode.
What is your playbook for assessing those third-party vendors, partners, to make sure that they help you build trust as well as, maintain, I think, the smooth experience in general? And what are the factors you're looking at?
I mean, beyond the basics of, are they a company that has stability? Can they scale with you, right? Are they the right size customer for you? Some may be too big, right? Can they move? Are they going to innovate? Are they going to collaborate with us? Some may be too small, right? Because they're just in their journey, and they really haven't had a chance to prove themselves from a scalability standpoint. But I think at the end of the day, you have to look at it and say, what are you trying to solve for? What's the problem you're trying to solve? And then does this third party help you with that? From my perspective, like I just said, we're on this data journey, right? So that's probably one of the number one elements that we look at. But we also look for partners that are willing to work with us, hear what types of use cases we're trying to solve and help us solve it as opposed to it just being a sale. And then we do data studies, right? Is this partner going to be able to give what we expected it to do? Are we getting the end result that we thought we would? And if it is, it's great. So that's pretty much our playbook. And it's worked really well.
That is great. What is maybe your one advice for compliance teams trying to stay ahead of the new, trends over the next few years?
Yeah, stay active. Stay very active in the industry. Talk to your peers about things that they're concerned with. How are they approaching some of the emerging trends? We love, as risk professionals, we love to talk about fraud. We love to talk about risk. So leverage that, tap into that, network with individuals that can help you kind of think about where the industry's going. What should I be thinking about? And then I would say something that's been very helpful for me in my career is it's flip the script, right? I have been in risk for a very long time, but I also spent time on the sales side of the business, and it wasn't until then where I really it clicked for me that it takes a lot of money for a company to acquire a customer, right? And so what we really tried to live every day from a risk standpoint is we're the sales enablement department. How do we help our company drive business, and how do we do it obviously in a compliant, how do we protect our company, but it's how do we say yes as opposed to no, we can't do that, it's too risky, right? But it's oh well, we could do it like this, right? And so really just collaborate. For me, that's when risk became fun. It was more about, how do we align to the business strategy? How do we help them become successful, as opposed to, worrying about whether we hit our loss budget for the year. Obviously important, but when you can help drive revenue too, that's fun. That's a lot more fun.
You definitely have to stay collaborative and creative, I think.
Yes.
When it comes to fraud and risk, you gotta listen to a lot of people around you. So yeah, we definitely agree. Well, thank you very much, Billy, for taking the time. It's great having you here, and enjoy Money 2020.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us on this special episode of What the Fraud. We hope you enjoyed these conversations from Money 2020 USA in Las Vegas. Please hit that follow button on your favorite podcast platform. And if you want to learn more about what we do at Sumsub and how your business can actually benefit from our verification services, definitely check out our website, www.sumsub.com, and subscribe to our socials. Stay safe.